if you consume alcohol, what's the first thing your body's going to get rid of? The carbs, the fat, or the alcohol? It's going to get the alcohol out first. So should I be running on alcohol?
Jacob, how did you find Carnivore?
Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe seven, my dad was doing a keto diet, and that's when it first introduced me to it. And I'll be honest, when I first heard about the ketogenic diet, I thought it was terrible because it made no sense to me at the time. Because I'm thinking, you're telling me you can lose weight eating all this fat, all this butter, you're drenching everything in butter, all these things that, we've kind of been taught that this is like one of the most unhealthiest things to do. Saturated fat causes heart disease. But then he actually lost weight on it, and he was actually the healthiest he's ever looked. Oh, he's since put off it, and I'm trying to encourage him to get back on it. But he loves food a lot, and then that got me reading, and I think I was. It was actually I came across Carnivore because I was watching, you know, like those stereotypical vegans that are super annoying. I was watching a video about there was these pigs that were going in, and they had these vegans that were protesting it, and this guy set up a hot dog stand, and it was in the comments that I saw people talking about carnivore. I then started looking up carnivore, and it just made so much sense because I first discovered Professor Bart K. I know you've talked to him. I've actually talked to him too. There's not a video of us, but I've actually talked to him at one point, and to see because he's actually a really smart guy. He's very like anything. He's a walking encyclopedia. Even Dr. Ken Berry says, "Yeah, like just anything. He's very smart." And of course, he's almost so smart that I can't get all my thoughts together because he says all this stuff and I can't keep up with it. And then I was, also I listen to Joe Rogan occasionally. I'm not a big time watch Joe Rogan all the time type of person, but he does put out some interesting stuff. And as you know, Jordan Peterson, he cured lots of his health problems, and all he said was he eats a beef, salt, and water diet. Just that. That was really interesting to see. Like you can really just survive just on beef. And then this also got me thinking about how human evolution played out. We didn't eat much plant material, very little, and because I know that when it comes to nutrition science, no one has a 100% answer of what we should be eating, what we shouldn't be eating. But if you base this on how we evolved as humans, there was no bread, which all carbohydrates turn into sugar, basically. So eating bread is like eating cake. And then when you start learning all of this, and also my experience with on this diet, when you come off of carbs, you actually get withdrawals. So what I did when I first started, I was actually 208 pounds. And I knew about the carnivore diet, but I guess you could say I was too lazy to actually do it. It does require some effort. So when I did start, I was at 208 pounds. So I don't really trust the BMI scale. Of course, it's off. Well, basically, it said I was obese, and I was definitely a little chubby. I'm not gonna lie, and I needed to improve myself. I needed to make a change. So I slowly, and I do recommend strongly to anybody that is going to thinking about or considering a carnivore or low carb diet to slowly transition yourself. Do not just go straight carnivore. You will get withdrawals from lack of carbohydrates. You'll find yourself having to use the bathroom very often, and you will feel very sluggish, like especially if you have to go into work or something and you have the keto flu, as they call it. Not everybody gets it, but it certainly is. It's not really dangerous per se. It's just unless you're very old, because you can possibly dehydrate yourself because you're using the bathroom too much. But what I did is I started off with I would just only eat uh, steak, some berries like blueberries, those are lower carb, and a potato. I would eat that, and then I would eat that for a few days. And then eventually I'd work my way down to just half a potato, and over time I would just eat that and just slowly reduce the amount of carbohydrates that I had. And I probably did it way too quickly, but I definitely did get some effects of the keto flu. It wasn't too bad. I was able to get over it pretty quickly. So I got down. Well, I weaned myself off of carbohydrates slowly, and one of the first things I noticed is that when I would go to sleep at night, I would have the same dream over and over where I would be eating potato chips, eating carbs, and then I would wake up the next day and say, "Oh, thank God, it was just a dream." But that's when I started realizing these carbs, they're very addictive. The fact that I'm dreaming about it, I'm dreaming about slipping up. Similar to like when people quit drinking alcohol, they have dreams where they're drinking and they wake up and they think, "Oh, I failed," but nope, it's just a dream. But as for the benefits of the carnivore diet, so at first, you get the carb withdrawals, all that. But the first benefit I started noticing is I was someone that snored a lot. Well, if it was recently up until this point, I would snore so loud to the point where I'd actually wake myself up. And partially that could be due to the fat that I was 208 pounds, and for my height, yeah, it was not a healthy weight to be at. So that could play some role into it. But I noticed that was the first thing that went away because I started snoring. And when you snore, you don't get good sleep. And it was snoring to the point I was waking myself up. That was the first thing to go, was the snoring. And this was before the weight loss even took effect. So that what made me believe that maybe the reduction of some of these non-carnivore foods in my diet were helping improve that. I started noticing even before, because I wasn't always heavy, I guess you could say. I usually could eat whatever I want. Obviously, as I'm getting older, my metabolism's slower. I can't quite get away with it. But when throughout, high school, all that stuff, I would eat pretty much anything, and I did not care. I would eat pizza, fast food all the time, and at the time, I could get away with it and stay thin. But I noticed that when I did carnivore, even back when I was skinny or a healthy weight, I have never slept as good as I do now. To the point where I wake up and I'm just in disbelief. I've never had that feeling in my life ever where I've slept so good. Well, I guess you could say you have that rare occasion where you stay up for a long time, you hit the blanket, you hit the bed, and you're instantly out. You wake up and say, "Wow, that was a really good sleep." But with carnivore, that's been happening like every day. I wake up and I'm still in shock. And then this is the big thing that this is the most important thing that I would say that carnivore has done for me. I come from a family, you could say it's genetic or whatever, of like my dad. We dealt with migraine headache issues. And this was just something that I thought I was going to have to live the rest of my life with because, you live, I guess, it starts when in my teenage years, I guess it started, especially like, if you have a massive weather change, it definitely you can definitely interrupt you and can trigger these headaches, can trigger migraines. And every few days, not maybe there would be periods where it happened more frequently than other, but I would have days where my day would just be gone due to these headaches and me not wanting to go get out of bed because bright lights that's going to make the headache worse. And I was really shocked when there was massive weather change and I didn't experience a single migraine. That's when I said to myself, I mean, pizza, Big Macs, those things all taste great, but if it means this, they gotta go. They gotta go. And I learned to train myself to look at food as we eat to live, not live to eat. And food can be very addicting. And I'm willing to put up with that. Sure, would I like to eat ice? Well, the more I eat carnivore, because Sure, I don't want to come here and say, "Oh, I've been perfect. I've never slipped up once." That's not true. And if you are someone that slips up, that's okay. Just get back on it.
What kind of timeline, are we talking here? Like, when did you actually get well, when you were kind of going slowly transitioning in with, the potato and the blueberries and stuff like that,
It was actually
and down to carnivore, how long was that?
it was actually I'm about to approach. Actually, as of today, that's how close it is. Around this time last year, or was it last year? No, I started in yes, it's 2024. Yeah, I started I started in 2023. That's when I took it the most seriously. Of course, I had periods before where I would do keto, but I never really was actually doing it to the extent that I am now. I was eating mostly animal based, but I was still eating, basically junk food lots of times. And yeah, that's what I was eating. I wasn't doing it perfectly, but this year of last year, that's when I was 208 pounds, and I said, okay, I am actually fat for once in my life, and I don't want to do that. And I also wanted to experience the other benefits of carnivore because, with keto, there's nothing wrong with keto per se, but learning that plants don't want to be eaten. And by ingesting them, you're consuming small amounts of toxins. Because, we say tobacco, look at all the chemicals and problems with tobacco. Well, you know that tobacco is technically a vegetable, right? So, would 3 cigars a day? Hey, food pyramid, I'm getting my servings of vegetables. You could, yep, I got my. Well, I don't even know. Well, the food pyramid has changed so much time. And actually, if you watch that one South Park episode, they actually mentioned the problem with the food pyramid is you need to turn it upside down. Have fats at the top, the meats at the top, and very little plant material, and especially grains, because that's where I believe that was like a marketing ploy because the farmers had so much grains they needed to sell it. So they said, "Oh, yeah, consume at least 6 servings of grains a day." And then there was like this wasn't even a conspiracy. This was straight up the sugar industry. Who was it that they exactly? I know that I think they bribed. They bribed. Yeah,
They bribed some people at Harvard
yeah,
to
and this is like confirmed. They said that no, saturated fat is the problem and not sugar, which obviously sugar is in pretty much all plant foods. Sure, vegetables don't have much, they have very little carbs compared to fruits, but bread, that's all carbohydrates turn into sugar. So, all that bread, pastas, pizzas, that's all sugar, whether you realize it or not. And you will get withdrawals if you stop eating it. And there's some people that say that carbohydrate is what the body prefers to run on because it burns carbohydrates first because when you go into ketosis, you don't have any carbs, so you're running on fat. Well, maybe I personally think it's a sign that these carbohydrates are possibly toxic because if you consume alcohol, what's the first thing it's your body's going to get rid of? The carbs, the fat, or the alcohol? It's going to get the alcohol out first. So should I be running on alcohol? No, I don't think that's a preferred. Uh, I don't think that's a
I've
preferred diet.
I've known people that do that, and it's not
Yeah.
pretty. It's not pretty.
Also, which because the big part of me discovering carnivore and deciding to try it for myself is trying to eat as how we ate naturally, and with carbs, I believe that their job is because when I guess you could say when we were living, as tribes or tribes to this day, they would come across honey or berries occasionally. Of course, not all the time, but because we didn't have access to food like we do now, those carbohydrates at that time served a purpose to help keep the fat stored onto us. So while we didn't have meat, these plant materials or these fruits, because obviously most of the fruits and vegetables we have today, you are completely different than what you would find out in the wild. So I do believe that some of these sugars, some of these carbs, at that time did serve a purpose to help us store fat. It's definitely something I see going on.
Yeah, I think you're right. So just on you had talked about your weight before.
Hmm.
Um, so you were starting at 208 pounds. What happened there?
I lost over 50 pounds. I am down
Oh, wow.
to 100. Let me see. I haven't taken it in a while, but I'm down to 100 and 40 something last I checked, around 150. I'm about 5'9", and the BMI scale, um, that's iffy.
Yeah. So, and the migraines have gone?
Pretty much, of course. I'll get slight. It's not well. Nothing's gonna ever be perfect, but it is like 90%, but 95 to 99% better. Sure, if there's like a big weather change, I might get slight headaches, but it's not debilitating. And as I continue going more and more, and maybe it could be because I've been consuming lots of dairy, I do find that dairy does cause problems for me because it dairy does. I do notice if I do consume too much of it, my sinuses, you get just the amount of mucus you produce because that's what dairy does. And when it comes to dairy, for me personally, everybody's different. For me, stomach wise, I can tolerate it, but when it comes to sinus issues, it probably is best that I don't. But I do like cheese, so I do try to keep that down to a minimum. Yeah, but if I don't consume any dairy, or I can't really recall ever really experiencing a migraine if I really strictly stick to mostly just beef. I have some fish here and there because I do love to go fishing, so I do like to eat that. I like to eat walleye and perch, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
So what
mhm.
is a day like for you, um, eating wise?
So for eating, well, I don't eat in the morning because this is another thing. This is maybe just me. I know that you eat breakfast because I've seen your thing. I've seen your video where you make breakfast, which I don't know how you eat all of that. I really don't. With so many eggs and so much meat. I would say I don't eat in the morning. Now, this is preference for me because I believe that that you want to be a little bit hungry because that's what helps drive you, in your work. And before we pre-agriculture, we were hunters, and being hungry was a sign of okay, let's go out and hunt. Let's go get some food. And I actually do go hunting also in real life as well, and I do eat that meat, of course. And so I usually eat around 5 o'clock. It depends if I have a well in the morning I work commission based, so and I get to choose my own hours, so it can vary. And then I have all sorts of other projects I work on, and then because everything else is like commission based, I trade and stuff. I have a part-time evening job that they sometimes call me in for. Well, I do that about 3 times a week. So if I am working my evening job, I will not eat until 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock or even 12 o'clock at night because sometimes I have to work that late.
And so it's just once a day?
Yes, but I don't want to. I will have I don't want to say it's always once a day. There sometimes is, I guess you could say, 1.5 meals. Yeah, and mostly consisting of steak, eggs. I'll have pork in that. Of course, on special occasions, you got to get some lobster. On special occasions, you got to get that. Like on my birthday, I'll eat lobster or crab legs. Now, a seafood only. Well, first of all, I couldn't afford a seafood only diet. And it gets boring pretty quickly, I imagine, if that's all you ate. Because that was another thing. Steak was my favorite food. It still is, but it did get boring at first. Because I remember I was getting so sick of steak. Like, I love steak, but I'm eating it so much, and I was just tired of it. But then I still kept going with it because the health benefits I was receiving. And then eventually I got over that. I was just like, steak now is just food to me. I mean, I don't hate it. It's not like, oh, I have to eat. No, I still enjoy it, but it's not like before. And that's another thing that I think I should mention is that, like, when you eat, when you're not eating carnivore, you go out and you get fast food, and it's like this huge rush. It's like a sugar rush to get a sugar high, and eating becomes like, oh my god, this is amazing. But on carnivore, it's just like, you know what? I'm hungry. This is good. Yeah. And also, after you're done eating, you don't feel sluggish or bloated or anything like you do when you have carbs. Like, especially like after Thanksgiving, everyone, they stuff themselves and now they're going to lay down and feel tired and worn out. It's definitely one of the things that I've noticed.
Yeah.
You have to look at eating differently. Just look at it as hungry, fill yourself up. That's the goal.
Mm. So a year in, do you still find you have cravings, or is food kind of just a functional thing for you now?
Well, that's a good question. Well, it's kind of like asking a smoker, do you still have cravings for cigarettes? Some of them, to some degree, you'll get two types. You'll have some that say, yeah, every once in a while I feel like a cigarette would be nice. And then you have the other ones that'll say, oh, no, never again. For me, they are very mild. Of course, you see birthday cake, ice cream, and it would be like, I kind of miss doing that. And there have been times when I slipped up, because I'm not going to lie, I slipped up before. And then there's been times like on Christmas or Thanksgiving. That's the times when I do slip up and I go back to eating that other stuff, which it almost just seems like foreign to me. Like, it just feels weird because I remember there was one time after I lost all of this weight and I was back to a healthy weight, and I even went back to the doctor, and the doctor's like, how did you lose all this weight? And I told him my diet, and he's like, you lost weight eating that? He said, I swear that's what I eat. And then I celebrated by going out to yes, I went out to a bar near me, and I celebrated by getting a pitcher of beer and a double cheeseburger. And I remember the only thing I liked about the burger was the meat itself, like the bun, the sauce, and it just felt really weird. And I no longer crave regular style, hamburgers. Of course, beef patties I'll eat. I'll make those, and I also find that charcoal grilling stuff, charcoal grilled steak, very good.
What would you recommend for someone who is starting carnivore? How would you recommend they get on board and they stick with it?
If they're going to get on board and stick with it. Now, I do want to say I am not a medical expert. You absolutely should be consulting a doctor. I don't want to be responsible for anything because well, you get what I'm trying to say is, if you're looking into getting onto carnivore, you know, I would say if you could just slowly eliminate the bad foods and really just train your brain. This is what helped me train your brain to say, I'll even go into more specifics. Okay, so take some water, take some flour, you put it together. What do you mean? It creates this dough. Now, think of that as that is pseudo synthetic slop. That is not food. You should not be consuming that. Um, Look at, outside, the trees, the leaves. Those are plants. You don't want to eat any of those either. I know, like, this seems silly, but this is what worked for me, and I know it seems silly. If you can just train your brain to think this is not food and look at it, because now whenever I look at, a loaf of bread, I'm just imagining Play-Doh from that dough that was literally being played with, being played with. and it to create some form of food, and that like turns my mind off of it. It was just like, oh, that's not food. That is Play-Doh that was put into an oven. So that's one thing I guess you could say. Another thing of it is, if you like soda, um, these things. I'm not sponsored, by the way, but these are the best flavored seltzer. I always say hard. No, this is a non-alcoholic hard seltzer. Well, if you do drink, I guess you can have hard seltzer, but also beware, if you're in ketosis, alcohol hits you a lot faster, and you should really be careful with that. Make it, if you are going to drink very slowly. You should. I do want to make a note of that, because yes, I learned the hard way, and your hangovers will be worse, and I've learned that the hard way. So just make a note of that. But these are non-alcoholic. These are the best tasting seltzer waters I've ever had. They actually taste like almost like soda. Well, then again, haven't had sugar for so long, but these are very good. I like Waterloo the best. They're better than LaCroix, and these will help get over your soda addiction. Another thing I'd recommend is, if you can get a charcoal grill, that will change things up, because I get a charcoal grill, and cooking on charcoal is absolutely amazing. It's because, regularly it is more of a pain, because you got to get the coals lit. Um, you have to get everything lit. You got to get all that stuff going, and it takes 30 minutes to get the coals going. But like, it not well. It's kind of like that flavor. You got to change it up sometimes. Also, eating some fish, maybe trying some new meats like bison steaks. I'm telling you, those are amazing. I actually like them better than cow steaks. They're less fatty, but they have just enough fat that they're still good. And I noticed that the fat on them, like if you've ever had like mozzarella sticks, the fat on them is kind of like that melted cheese of the mozzarella, and it's really good. I definitely recommend that. Lamb, I like lamb shoulder, but lamb chops, it's a little too gamey for me, even though I eat animals that I go hunting for. Well, I mostly hunt pheasants, and I love those. Those are good. I just roast them with just butter and bacon grease. Another tip: save your bacon grease. There's this little thing that I bought. It's so that you can cook bacon in the microwave, because bacon's like the only thing that to me that tastes just the same as cooked in the microwave as on the stove. And it collects the bacon grease. I put that into a jar, and then whenever I make my steaks, I take a spoonful of that bacon grease, I put it on the pan, and I cook it in that, because I try to avoid olive oil or any seed oils, because I know that those are in question of having very possible serious health consequences, and I'd rather just avoid them. And butter burns too quickly, I always notice. So you can either go with the beef tallow also, but I haven't used that yet. If I'm frying some chicken wings, I think Buffalo Wild Wings actually does that. They fry their wings in beef tallow. So as long as you don't get any sauce, that perfectly fine.
Jacob, do you have any way of reaching out to you? Do you have a YouTube or any social media?
Yes, I do. I do. And I wasn't going to admit it. Well, I don't make carnivore style videos per se. I'm more of a commentary YouTube channel. So I made, videos of me poking fun at vegans, I guess you could say. I don't make like actual. Well, I talk about how I do follow a carnivore based diet and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm a more of like a comedy, more of like a comedy channel, I guess you could say. And if you want me to give that, I can.
Yeah, sure. Jacob, I'll link to your channel below. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.